Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2026 Sony Open DFS Tactics show. Apologies for the delayed start this evening. I have prior commitments on Wednesday evenings in the winter. I'm playing co-ed wiffle ball, and we happen to have the late game tonight and most every night. But no fear, we are here for everything that you need to finalize your lineups and to make those last wagers for your card for the Sony Open. With the delayed start, I don't want to delay any further, so let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight are from Fantasy National. They are merging with another golf analytics site, so I'm sure I'll migrate over to the other site eventually, but for right now, Fantasy National has everything we need to cover all of our bases. So all statistics provided by Fantasy National. In the description of the video, there are links to all the social media. My X and Instagram, where earlier this week I posted some research regarding the Sony Open. You want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That'll come out later this evening after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see the players that I'm wagering with my own money and the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. I can't recommend it enough. And by subscribing to his article, you're going to get his deluxe version, which comes out early on Wednesdays, which has the projected ownerships, which I use in my calculations. So you really are missing out. Make sure you're subscribed to his article and following him over on social media, because the 2026 Picks Challenge is live. And of course, we'll go over that at the end of the show. But our official write-ups and selections are over on his social media page. We encourage you to play along with us. So on his social media page, or if you prefer to play in chat or in the comments of this show, feel free to do that as well. We'd love to have or hear your opinions and have you play along with us. Lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all. Because of the delayed start, I don't have a poll question this evening, so apologies for that, but feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and opinions on everything Sony Open. Who do you think's going to win? Who are you targeting? Who are you staying away from? All of that good stuff. Jump into chat. If you're not able to catch the show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2026 Sony Open. We're going to start, as we always do on a Wednesday evening, over at what I normally would say is the super forecast for the week, but Waialae Beach does not have access to a super forecast, so all we have is available to us is what you see here. Looks like they've been hit with some rain today. If you follow several PGA accounts, they have talked about how much rain they have gotten this week, so the course is going to be much more soft than what it normally is. They usually try to keep the fairways pretty firm and give some rollout. That way players have a little bit of trouble keeping the ball in the fairway. Might not have that this week. But for our intents and purposes, it looks like we've got a wave advantage. The Thursday morning is going to have the best wind of the entire week with single-digit sustained winds. The gusts aren't coming in tomorrow until, the afternoon wave. And then you see it stays for all of Friday, all of Saturday, and most of Sunday. Now, Championship Sunday, the final groupings might have some decent weather as well. But for the cut portion, for our intents and purposes, there's a pretty heavy advantage for the Thursday AM, Friday PM wave. Yes, the Friday PM wave is bad, but all of Friday is bad with sustained winds into the 20s. So try to get, I'm going to have a pretty significant advantage for the Thursday AM portion. Try to target the players that are going out early, especially the earliest of early tomorrow. That is how I see the forecast and the wave advantage, a significant one for the Thursday AM, Friday PM. We'll move to Fantasy National. And we're not going to do much of a review here. Just remember, Kevin Yu has withdrawn. He withdrew very early this week. So if you filled out lineups early, make sure that Kevin Yu is not in them. All right, let's just go ahead and jump straight into the mixed condition model that I have made for Waialae and the Sony Open this week. We're going to start with 10% in total performance, strokes gained total, in moderate and windy conditions. Based on that forecast that we have, it's going to be difficult, or at least more difficult than what we're accustomed to around Waialae. It's going to be windy. You want to make sure the players that you're using are adept in the wind. So I usually don't like putting windy, the windy filter and strokes gained total in general in mixed condition models, but I thought it was appropriate here because even with the windy conditions, it's not guaranteed to be difficult. We had 4 rounds of windy last year, and we had a couple rounds still play easy. So I'm not confident it's going to be extremely difficult. I think it's going to be more difficult than what we're accustomed to seeing at Waialae, but I don't think we're going to see anything in terms of a single-digit winner. I'm still thinking we're going to have about a 15 to 16 under winner. So 10% total performance in moderate and windy conditions, 5% off the tee on short courses, especially with the wind. I think it's going to be even more imperative that players are in the fairway. So they're going to be clubbing down. And that's why I didn't want to go with driving distance. I didn't want to go with accuracy because generally speaking, players are pretty accurate with 3 woods and fairway metals and irons. So I just used off the tee using the filter short courses when courses force you to lay up or positional. You know, this should highlight the players that are more aggressive than their peers and generally take advantage of it, which is what Sony rewards. So 5% there. I didn't want to overweight it. I don't know how much off the tee is really going to matter this week because I do think the wind's going to play a pretty big factor, and I don't know. I just don't know how many drivers are going to be hit. I could be wrong, but I just don't know how many drivers are going to be hit this week. 10% approach, to me, the most important shot type in golf, but it is quite suppressed here. Only for your upper echelon finishers, your Siwoo Kims when they win, the Nick Taylors when they win. But really, throughout the top 15, top 20, strokes gained approach is pretty suppressed. So that's why it's only at 10% here in the mixed condition model. But it's still going to be very important, especially with the wind. Players are going to have to be adept at finding these greens. Even though they're large, they can be a little bit more tricky to hit. So 10% approach, 5% around the green. Because of the wind, I do think greens are going to get missed more often than we see here. I debated on whether I wanted to use sand saves because the majority of the around the green shots around Waialae are sand or bunker shots, but not always. So I just went with 5% around the green. The biggest portion of the mixed condition model, 15% in Bermuda putting. These are specifically TIFF Dwarf Bermuda. I did find that piece of information throughout the week. But putting is the be-all, end-all here at Waialae. And I don't think that's going to change with the wind. I think it might be a little bit less important, and irons become a little bit more important because of the wind. But I don't think it's going to be such a huge factor, or I don't think it's going to flip. And approach needs to be 15 and putting 10. I still think putting is going to be the most important part of this tournament, like it normally is. So 10% or 15% on Bermuda putting. You know, think about players like Billy Horschel, Harry Hall. These guys that are generally at their best on Bermuda, they're going to rise because the biggest portion of the mixed condition model is Bermuda putting. Good evening, Darnell. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Apologies for the delayed start, but glad to see you here. Hopefully you had a very Merry Christmas. You've had a great start to 2026. You have been successful in whatever endeavors that you have partaken in that time. Fantasy football, fantasy hockey, fantasy basketball, anything like that. And yes, we are back at it. The PGA is back, and we are ready to go. We're going to try and get off on the right foot in 2026. Good to see you. 5% good drives, and I use the filter long rough. There's been a lot of talk about how the rough is a lot longer, or players are talking about how it's a lot longer than they remember here at YLI, and there's going to be a little bit more emphasis in being in the fairway. So good drives are players that hit the fairway, or they still hit the green from the rough or the fairway bunker or whatever whatever lie they have if it's not fairway. 5% here. Again, I did not want to overweight any off the tee statistics, which that is a part of, or it can be a part of with the fairways. So 5% good drives gained, 5% bogey avoidance. We looked at this Monday night in the Data Dive show. Birdies gained is the higher raw number, but the more consistent metric around YLI has been bogey avoidance, and I think it's going to be even more important this week because I think it's going to play a little bit more difficult than we're used to seeing YLI with that forecast. So 5% bogey avoidance. Again, I don't like that I had to use the short course filter, but it just made sense. I generally prefer to use a scoring filter like easy or difficult relative to par with a scoring metric like bogey avoidance and birdies gained, but I will not use the average relative to par. So that's why I use the short course filter there. 10% each in the proximities 150 to 200 in each bucket. 150 to 175, 175 to 200. We talked about this all week. YLI emphasizes this range of approach shots astronomically compared to the average tour event. You know, a quarter of your approach shots from 150 to 175, 23% from 175 to 200. Just a huge plethora of approach shots fall to this range, and that's why I want to see who is the best at those ranges. So 10% in each proximity, 150 to 200, 10% each in the par fours, 400 to 500, 400, 450, 450 to 5. Look, again, going back to the course breakdown, we have 12 par 4s here. This is a par 70, only 2 par 5s. So 12 par 4s, 10 of those 12 fall to this range. We do have the short 351 and 398, which, if they lengthen it, you can easily see falling into the 400 to 450. So a lot of the strokes gained in par 4s and at Sony and at YLI in general fall to this range. So a lot of emphasis in the par 4s, and then we'll finish the mixed condition model out with short par 5s, since both par 5s are short here at YLI, and you still have to take advantage of them because they are the best scoring opportunities. That is a look at the mixed condition model that I have for YLI and the Sony Open this week. Areas where I might be weak, if off the tee matters more than I think, you know, if players are getting more aggressive into the, you know, with the wind and all that stuff, you know, I'll be weak to it because I only have 5% off the tee, and then, you know, a little bit of a hidden percentage here, 5% in good drives. So if off the tee matters a little bit more, I'll be weak. You know, if this should have been sand saves, you know, I accept that. I just chose to go around the green. I was debating between around the green and sand saves. So if it is sand saves that matter, you know, I'll be a little bit weak to that. Good evening, John. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Glad to see you this evening. Hopefully you had a very Merry Christmas, a great start to your 2026 in whatever wagering endeavors that you've partake in, whether that is fantasy football, fantasy basketball, maybe fantasy hockey, anything like that. It's good to see you this evening. Apologies for the delayed start, as I am in a co-ed wiffle ball league on Wednesdays in the winter, and tonight and pretty much almost every Wednesday we'll have the late game, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. So again, apologies for the delayed start, but we're here, and we're going to be covering everything you need to finalize everything for the Sony Open. So thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. You know, if putting doesn't matter as much this year because of all the wind, then, you know, I'll be weak because I still have putting as the most important shot type here. If par 3s matter, I don't have any par 3 weighting in this mixed condition model. If par 3s matter, I'll be weak to that. But otherwise, feel pretty good about this mixed condition model based on the forecast, with all the wind, all that. So that is what I have for the Sony Open. We will move to Microsoft Excel and the reveal of my rankings for the Sony Open. As a reminder for returning viewers, for your information if you are a new viewer, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The Fantasy National rank, based on the mixed condition model that we just talked about, the metrics, percentages that we just went over. Fantasy National will spit out a ranking based on the criteria that we put in. So that is a portion of my rankings. Course value is an attempt at giving a player a numerical value at how well they have played that course over the past 5 years. So somebody like Russell Henley is going to have an exceptionally low number because he's been very good. And somebody like Colin Morikawa, although he's played well here twice, he's not going to have as much raw numbers because his tournaments are a little bit further back. I only go back 5 years, but course, that is what course value is. It's a number to determine how well they have played that course over the past 5 years. The smaller the number, the better. And then projected ownerships, and these are from Gabe. Gabe, who has done the fantastic article called The Fringe. I would not recommend it if I didn't use the article and believe in what he was writing and producing. He produces his own projected ownerships, and they've been pretty solid. So, he's going to miss some every week. It just happens, but he's been pretty solid. So, projected ownerships are a factor in my rankings because we're playing DFS. We're trying to find unique options off of our fellow contestants. Let's start the year off with a bang. We're going to try AM guys, right? Yes. I will go very quickly back to that forecast. We don't get the super forecast for Waialae Beach, so all we get is the forecast, the regular forecast here. But you can see, based on this, the best wind is Thursday morning because the heavy stuff comes in tomorrow afternoon and stays for the rest of the tournament. So yes, I personally have a fairly significant advantage for the Thursday AM, Friday PM portion. Going back to Microsoft Excel, just that is the explanation of my rankings. I do not factor in the draw or perceived good or bad half of the draw into my rankings. As you can see, a player with the perceived bad half of the draw is technically number 1. That's why I give you this column here if there is a wave advantage to use for your own purposes. Because my rankings are based on strictly a number that is calculated based on these 3 things. So without the wave advantage factored in, my rankings for the Sony this week, Hideki is my number 1 player. I'll put an asterisk on that, especially because he is in the bad half of the draw. Russell Henley second. He would be my number 1 player, all things considered. Harry Hall, Colin Morikawa, and Nick Taylor round out my top 5. Mav McNeely, Keegan, Ben Griffin, Siwoo Kim, and Corey Connors round out my top 10. Good evening, P. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Hopefully you had a very Merry Christmas. You've had a great start to your 2026, and you've been successful in whatever wagering endeavors that you have partaken in. I will humbly bow out of any Bears-Packers conversation that you would like to have. I am just going to be mum on that, and we're going to keep it that way. But it's good to see you in chat, P. Thanks again for jumping in chat. Very, very much appreciated. Look, I don't really have any real surprises or qualms. I need a cheese grater hat. You might get timed out for that comment, sir. I don't really have any qualms with my top 10. You can always argue the ordering. Again, I would not put Hideki number 1. I liked Hideki at the beginning of the week, and then I saw he had the bad half of the draw. I would drop him more in my rankings. I love Russell Henley. Everybody does. There's no reason not to like Russell Henley. Loves this course. The strokes gained total leader here at YLI over the past 5 years. Another Patriots Super Bowl going to be great. I think I'd pull for the Patriots. I know I'd pull for the Patriots before the Bears, but that's not a very high bar, Darnell. So that's all. I'm just going to leave it at that one too. Leave that one there. Harry Hall's fine. Colin Morikawa, I really like this week. Nick Taylor has been exceptional around here. So again, I don't have much of a qualm with my top 10. You can always argue the ordering. Ben Griffin's getting hurt because he's pretty popular. I would probably bring JJ Spawn up a little bit further in my rankings. He's getting hurt because he's very popular, but overall feel pretty good about these. So let's go ahead and sort on the price board, figure out where our fellow contestants seem to be going at various areas of the price board and how we can maneuver around them. So in the 5 digits, in the 10Ks, we have 2 players this week. We have Russell Henley at 10-3, Ben Griffin at 10-1. You can see Henley is the more popular option. I like both players, really. But if I had to choose one, I'd still go Russell Henley, even considering the higher ownership. I'm just very confident that Russell Henley is going to play well at the Sony. It's just kind of what he does. The course, his game is built for the Sony. If we take a look at his prior performances here, I mean, it's just exceptional. Really, really exceptional. If I could type, because apparently I can't. So neat. Sam, thanks for jumping in chat. Very, very much appreciated. Hopefully you had a very Merry Christmas and a great start to your 2026. You've been successful in whatever wagering endeavors that you've partaken in. Very much appreciated that you've jumped into chat this evening. I apologize, I don't have a poll question. I was running late this evening as I had prior commitments, but I will have poll questions starting next week. But feel free to jump into chat with any questions you have. It's good to see you this evening. But again, coming back to Russell Henley, 2 straight top 10s, and 3 of his 4 past events have been top 10s. 4 of his past 5 have been top 15s. I mean, Russell Henley loves the Sony, and he's been putting well at the Sony. So I would make Russell Henley the number 1 player in the 10Ks for sure. Yes, he is much more popular than Ben Griffin. It's not to say that Ben Griffin isn't going to be good. I do think Ben Griffin's going to be serviceable and viable. And I've made several lineups that go Russell Henley and Ben Griffin because they have the good half of the draw. But if I had to choose one or the other, I would go Russell Henley. But Ben Griffin is just fine. I mean, he rated 8th, 5th by the model. He's getting hurt by the fact that he's a little bit popular and he hasn't been as good as some of these others like Russell Henley, like Nick Taylor, like Hideki here at YLI. So, but Ben Griffin's fine. So I don't have any problem with either of these players. If you want to, plant your flag on them, that's fine. I'm going to plant my flag on Russell Henley. I'm just very confident that he's going to play well. Yes, the ownership is hideous. I'm setting myself up already to be duplicated a lot. I'll take that. I'll find my uniqueness elsewhere, lower in the price board. In the 9Ks, I had a strong feeling about Hideki earlier this week. And then the tee times came out, and he gets the bad half of the draw, which forced me to pivot a little bit. Now, that's not to say I'm not going to use Hideki. I still will. He's been very good here. He is still one of the more popular options in the 9Ks. But I'm going to pivot a little bit. I'm not going to be all in on Hideki like I thought I was going to be. I really thought I was going to start my lineups 80 to 90% of the time going Henley, Hideki. And I'm not because of the poor half, or the bad half of the draw that Hideki got. JJ Spawn, fine, but very, very popular. I mean, look at the year that he had. A lot of these statistics are being gathered from his 2025 and his breakthrough wins and all that stuff. It's fine. He hasn't been as great at YLI as some of these others. He's been good, just not great. It's fine, but knowing I'm going Henley, I'm trying to stay away from Spawn a little bit more consciously. I'm going to still play Spawn. But I've actually been going to Colin more and more. He is, 6 to 7% less owned than JJ Spawn. He's been very good. Only 2 tournaments here. And the last time he played the Sony Open was 2021, but he's been very good here. And yes, the Bermuda or the putter is always an issue, but he's actually been pretty good here in his 2 tournaments. He was slightly less. He lost strokes slightly in 2020, and then gained quite a bit in 2021. So he's fairly comfortable on these greens. Good evening, Kyle. Thanks for jumping into chat. Very much appreciated. Happy New Year to you as well. I hope you had a very Merry Christmas and you've had a great start to your 2026, whatever wagering endeavors that you've partaken in, whether that's fantasy football, fantasy basketball, maybe even fantasy hockey, whatever you have partaken in. Hopefully you've had success. And we're going to try and start our 2026 PGA off on the right foot over in Hawaii with the Sony. Thanks again for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Apologize. I don't have a poll question for you. Started the stream late as I had prior commitments, but feel free to jump into chat with any questions you have. We're going through the price board, giving you my thoughts and my opinions. We'll make some lineups. And of course, at the end of the show, we'll have the 2025 picks challenge or 2026 picks challenge between Gabe and I. And Gabe and I encourage you to play along with us, either in the comments, in chat, or even better, if you go over to his social media page, play along with us over there as our full write-ups over on his social media page as well. But thanks for jumping in the chat, Kyle. Much appreciated. So yes, I've been going to Colin more often than not this week to get off of some of the JJ Spawn chalk, and a little worried about Hideki and the bad half of the draw. Now, elsewhere in the 9Ks, there are 2 players that I'm just flat out taking a stand and not playing. Because you see all, 7, 8 of them, 9 of them? All 9 of them rated in my top 20. You can't play everybody. You've got to take a stand on some guys. So for me, the 2 guys that I'm taking a stand on in the negative, in not playing, I'm not going to play any Bobby Mack, even though he has the good half of the draw. He's just not been very good here in a couple of tries. Yes, he's been good on Bermuda, generally pretty good in the wind. This is just simply a you can't play everybody type thing, especially because I want to play Colin. I still want to play Hideki. I still want to play a little bit of JJ Spawn. You can't play everybody. So I'm going to plant my flag and say Bobby Mack's going to not be worth his price. I'm not going to say he's missing the cut, but I don't think he'll be worth his price this week. And the same goes for Siwoo. There's been a lot of talk about how Siwoo has played very well around Waialae. He's a former champion, but I want you to really take a note on his true performance here at Waialae. He misses the cut last year. A T42 2 years ago. Wins in 2023. He had another top 25 in 2021. But you see the putter has been really bad here. Sorry, I'll swivel out of the way. Putter's been really bad here. If he's not gaining a lot of strokes with the irons, he's been pretty lackluster. And you take a look at his iron form. He did well at the FedEx St. Jude. Was fine at the BMW. Was horrendous at the Bay Current. This is just, I can get away from it. And I know it's dangerous, but I am not as big of a believer in Siwoo and his, this immaculate course history that people seem to be gravitating towards. It's a win, it's a top 25, and there's not much else there in the past 5 years. So those are the 2 players in the 9Ks that I'm going to stay away from. I understand Siwoo's a little bit of a gamble, but he's also got the bad half of the draw. Bobby Mack, he has not been good around Waialae. He's got the good half of the draw. It's just one of those things you can't play everybody. Otherwise, literally everybody else in the 9Ks I will have some exposure to. Again, I am mostly going to Colin. I will play Hideki. I will play a little bit of JJ Spawn. I'm trying to be much more conscientious of it because of how popular he is. There's nothing wrong with Keegan other than the bad half of his draw, but Keegan's been very good around here. McNeely's been pretty good around here. He's probably the one I'm least excited about of the ones that I'm playing. Harry Hall's fine. And Nick Taylor has been, just like Russell Henley, exceptional around here. So I'm going to make sure I'm playing Nick Taylor because he also has the good half of the draw. So the 9Ks was very hard for me to make a stand, in the affirmation or in the positive. So I had to go the other way and eliminate players. So I eliminated Bobby Mack. I eliminated Siwoo Kim. I'm going to go to Colin more often than not up here. But literally my exposure, I'll have, some Colin, some Hideki, a little JJ, a little Keegan, a little Mav, Harry Hall, and some Nick Taylor. I mean, I didn't have a strong feeling about the 9Ks in the affirmative. Moving down into the 8s. Because I didn't have any strong feelings or I liked a lot in the 9s, the 8s kind of got squeezed out for me, which is fine because a lot of the ownership in the 8Ks is coalescing around Corey Connors. Now, I like Corey Connors. I'm going to play Corey Connors just like JJ Spawn. I like it. It makes a lot of sense. But that's a whole lot of ownership that you're going to be eating. That's a lot of chalk you're eating if you're going to put JJ Spawn and Corey Connors in the same lineup. It makes a lot of sense. Connors, number 1 in the wind, moderate and windy conditions. Number 1 at the 150 to 175 proximity. Yes, his putter's always going to be his bugaboo, sure. But, good drives gained, accurate with the irons and with the driver. Takes advantage of short par 4 or short par 5s. A lot to like here with Corey Connors, with the exception of that ownership. So I'm going to play him. I'm going to be a little bit less than what you might think. Otherwise, in the 8Ks, like Chris Kirk would be fine, but I'm a little scared off by the bad half of the draw. Brian Harman loves this place. So even though he didn't rate out terribly well, he's unique enough that it's probably worth a shot if you're playing multiple lineups like I do. I play many lineups, so understand that when I say I have a lot of exposure to a lot of the guys in the 9s, I am afforded the ability to do that because I play a lot of lineups. But I'll have Brian Harman once or twice maybe. Adam Scott, take a look at Adam Scott for 1 or 2 lineups, especially since he's at only 6.5%. But the 8Ks just kind of got squeezed out for me because I couldn't really nail down the 9Ks all that much. And also because I love Denny McCarthy at 79. Good half of the draw. One of the best course values or best histories here in the past 4 years. We all know about how well he putts, and Sony is a putting contest a lot of times. His irons have gotten a lot better over the past, year and a half. Takes advantage of these shorter par 4s. Like, I'll bring up his page view just very quickly. Denny McCarthy has steadily gotten better and better and better at YLI over the past 4 years. 4 years ago, T48 just disappeared behind the notification or the reminder down there. 3 years ago, T32. 2 years ago, top 25. Last year, top 20. And he had never really gained with the irons until last year. But we all know his putting prowess. You got to love that at a course that rewards exceptional putting. His last few tournaments, he's been hot with the irons. I love everything about Denny McCarthy. Technically plays his best in the wind. I love everything about Denny McCarthy. That's why I was able to stay away from a lot of the 8s, because I'm coming down to a 13% owned Denny McCarthy, and I am pushing the chips all in on Denny. I'll have him anywhere from 85 to 95% owned in my lineups. If he doesn't play well, I'll lose. But that is where I'm planting my flag, on Russell Henley and on Denny McCarthy. In the upper sevens, a lot of people are gravitating to Nico Echeverria. Makes a lot of sense. That's another reason why I like Denny McCarthy, because good half of the draw and the pivot off of the same priced player. But there's nothing wrong with Nico. Nico's fine if you're more of a believer in Nico. I want to point your attention to Johnny Kiefer. This is an all-world talent. I don't know if the Sony is going to be his big breakout performance, but he top 10'd the RSM before we took the break in November. This guy is an all-world talent. He's already 45th in the OWGR. Like, he's already in the Masters at such a young age. This is an all-world talent. I want to make you aware of him. He is not going to be 6% owned for very long. Now, he does have the bad half of the draw, so I don't know if this is the right spot for Johnny Kiefer, but Johnny Kiefer is somebody to keep your eye on early on this year, because he's for real. He's the real deal. Moving down into the middle sevens. Much like Johnny Kiefer, one of these new players on the PGA Tour, the DP World, one of the graduates from the DP World Tour, or top 10 from the DP World Tour. Take a look at Christopher Raytan. Raytan had a solid 2-week stretch from the Scottish Open and the Open Championship, and parlayed that into, I think it was a top 5 finish in the Need Heat Bank. I know I'm butchering that pronunciation. I apologize. I don't follow DP World Tour very much at all, but he's been playing well over on the DP World Tour. Now he's coming and seemingly committing to the PGA Tour. So this is another player that I want to make you aware of, because he won't be 6% owned for very long. He's going to be pretty darn good. So, again, he rated out fairly middling because he doesn't have a lot of stats. He hasn't spent a lot of time on the PGA Tour yet. Just be aware of that early on this year. But elsewhere in the mid-sevens, like Daniel Berger's kind of interesting. I understand he's had a lot of health issues the past couple years, 2 to 3 years. Supposedly he's healthy now. We'll see. He does have the bad half of the draw, but the Sony is the kind of course that he generally competes well at. You think about his win at what was the old Honda. Short. Now, Sony's easy. Honda's very difficult, but same style of play. Lots of fairway woods and irons off tees. These middle iron approach shots, the 150 to 200s. Bermuda putting, which I know it says it hasn't been very good here, but Daniel Berger's from the South. He putts pretty darn well on Bermuda. Plays well in the wind. Normally, this is a spot I would like Daniel Berger. I'm just a little conscious of the tee time, of the bad half of the draw, and to see if I'm more so anxious to see if he is truly fully healthy. Elsewhere in the mid-sevens, Billy Horschel. I know it's the bad half of the draw, but anytime you're on Bermuda greens, it's Bermuda Billy. You gotta be wary or be aware of Billy Horschel in a field with Bermuda greens. Bad half of the draw, sure. He's also coming off an injury, that hip surgery that derailed his season last year. Supposedly healthy now. Anxious to see. I'm going to sprinkle some Billy Horschel this week. And then moving into the lower sevens, I'm going to be honest, there's not a whole lot here that I like in the low sevens. Alex Smalley has not really been great around here, but generally plays well in the wind. So you're playing Alex Smalley for his wind prowess, but you see he's not really been all that great here. Somebody that could be interesting is Hao Tong Lee, another one of these DP World Tour, top 10. I'll say graduate. That's not the right terminology, but one of these players that finished top 10 in the DP World Tour and were given membership to the PGA Tour. He's actually played the Sony before and finished in the top 15. So Hao Tong Lee, somebody worth a look this week if you're needing somebody in the low sevens. I've been going to Bud Cauley I'm a little nervous about it. Yes, he's got the bad half of the draw, but I'm hoping his performance in the wind kind of holds up. His putt is, pretty good putting on Bermuda, pretty solid with these proximities. So I'm hoping that Bud Cauley parlays, this solid 2025 builds on that momentum into 2026, at least this week for the Sony. Now you look at somebody like Matty Schmid, who's excellent. I mean, elite at these proximities, and with the good half of the draw, why aren't I, advocating for Matty Schmid? Prior performance at the Sony is pretty predictive. I've seen throughout the Twitter sphere that it's the 5th most predictive course on the PGA Tour. And you see Matty Schmid has not been very good. I think he's 0 for 2, maybe 0 for 3 in terms of making the cut at the Sony. He's not been very good here. The metrics say he should be okay, but his performance hasn't lined up. So whether that's the irons not playing well, maybe he's been getting in trouble off the tee, he's not the greatest around the green. Depends on what you are a believer in. If you're a believer in the statistics, probably worth a look at Matty Schmid. If you're a big believer in course history, and Sony tends to be more on the course history side, then stay away. Who's the guy around 7? Eckroat? You're beating me to the punch there, Darnell, but we'll get there. At 7,000, I've been going to Bud Cauley. Again, Matty Schmid could be interesting. Luke Clanton, I still believe in the talent, but he's got to show us something. Tom Kim, 7,000, good half of the draw. What kind of season are we going to get from Tom Kim after a pretty poor 2025? Moving into the 6s, there are 2 names that I want to give you all for plays potentially down in the 6Ks. Darnell mentioned the first one. First one's Austin Eckroat at 6,900. Eckroat's been pretty decent here. Very good with the irons. I don't think he's really that bad in the wind. We'll bring up his player page view just very, very quickly. Eckroat. He's been actually really good in the windiest of conditions. He's just been kind of so-so in moderate conditions. That's what's bringing that number down. Look, he's not a good putter. He's not very good with the short game. That's just not his strength. That's not what he brings to the table. He is a ball striker, particularly with the irons. So you're going to play Austin Eckroat believing that the irons are going to be more important than perhaps what I've given them credit or credence to this week. Look, he finished top 15 here 3 years ago. But that was, he also putt much higher than his baseline. His baseline is slightly negative, and he gained 3.3. So you can't count on that. Having said that, it's not impossible. He is one of the players that spikes most often on Bermuda. So I do like Austin Eckroat this week. So good shout there, Darnell. But the name that I'm going to give you all in the 6Ks, the Mad Scientist play is true Mad Scientist. Like Nick's gone completely off the reservation with this one. But at 6,300, I'm going to highly recommend Tom Hoge this week. Tom Hoge, very good in the wind. His irons have been pretty bad lately, but we know he is one of the best iron players on the PGA Tour. He's just in a slump right now. Pretty darn good on Bermuda, and that's always been his bugaboo, is the short game. Around the green and putting, more so around the green, but he's actually positive in his career on Bermuda. He's playing the proximities. He's excellent with those proximities. I'm hoping the fact that getting the driver out of his hands is going to help him this week. McGreevy is top value play on RotoWire for whatever reason. A lot of people have been liking McGreevy, but I'm going to tell you, he's also popular. Austin Eckroat is almost 7%. Max McGreevy is a little bit over 6%. So even though I shouted out Austin Eckroat, he is the most common 6K play, so be aware of that. But I have not seen anybody talk about Tom Hoge, and maybe for good reason. But you think about Tom Hoge's win on the PGA Tour, where was it? It was Pebble Beach. Pebble Beach is a pretty darn good comp course for Sony. Yes, it's POA greens, and these are Bermuda, but Pebble Beach is short, has some positional holes to it. You don't hit driver off of every hole. You look at his top performances. Win at the Pebble Beach, short course. The Amex, short and very easy. The Travelers, short, very easy. The Players, very windy. And Sawgrass isn't all that long. Century is generally somewhat windy, but this is back when he was, really dialed with the irons. He's also top 5'd the Sony before. So you take a look at all of these top performances in Tom Hoge's career. They've been on short courses, generally pretty easy short courses, just like the Sony. We've already talked about how good he is in the wind, or at least he has been recently. I know that says it's better when he's calm, but he's been playing better in the wind. He's actually slightly positive putting on Bermuda. This is a gut feeling. If you don't agree with me, I completely understand, because his form lately has been atrocious. But don't forget, he was in the top 50 last year. I don't know how, but he was. And he was showing signs of life. Bank of Utah gained a bunch with the irons. It's not in here, but he also top 15 the worldwide technologies. So he was showing signs of life at the end of 2025. I'm going to bank on that, still sticking around, because we know when he is right, he is one of the better iron players on the PGA Tour, especially when he was dialed in back here, back in 2024 and his win in 2023, etc. So Tom Hoge is the mad scientist play this week. All right, with that, we've covered some of the price board. Let's go start making some lineups. We're gonna try and make some popular lineups to know what we need to work around, and then we'll get into the picks challenge with Gabe. Kanaya popping over there too. Not familiar with that dude, I don't think. Takumi Kanaya. Takumi Kanaya. If you know, tell me his price. I'm sure he's in the 6Ks. There he is. Yeah, 6,700. He's been off and on the PGA Tour a little bit. Decent enough in the wind. He's the antithesis of Tom Hoge. Takumi Kanaya is pretty darn good around the green. Number one player at finding fairways and finding greens when the rough is long. He's just a very, very accurate player, not very long, which you would think would suit Wildeye pretty well. But you see the performance. It hasn't matched up. So something's got to give there, P. I'm willing to hold off, and if Takumi Kanaya pops a little bit, I'll just be late on it. But with the Sony being such a focus on past prior performance and Takumi Kanaya not really showing any, I'm willing to overlook it. WorldWire usually has good projections. From my experience with golf, they're a bit off. I mean, again, I'm just appreciative that you all tune in and watch and listen and take my advice and take my suggestions as part of your calculations. I said this in the beginning when my show had, or my stream or whatever had 5 viewers on it. I said I should not be your only source of information. I am just grateful that you find me a source of information, and I try to give you the best information that I can. I'm not always right. Darnell and P, who have been here for a long time, who have supported the channel a long time, they can tell you I have had some really, really horrendous suggestions. I will say I've had some decent ones over the years as well, so it tends to even out. But I'm just grateful that you all take the time out of your day, or now your evening, to listen to what I have to say, and I try to help you all as best as I can. Ali, thanks for jumping into chat. Very much appreciated. Thanks for getting and just sharing your thoughts. I appreciate it. No, I love what I do. Thanks for jumping into chat. Hopefully you had a very Merry Christmas and a great start to your 2026, and you're ready for the Sony Open. How do I feel about Pendrith? I don't know if this is the right course for Pendrith, but I'm pretty bullish on Pendrith in the macro, in the aggregate for 2026, Darnell. I don't know how I feel about him for this week. He hasn't been particularly good at YLI. He's pretty good in the wind, pretty good with these proximities, but he generally takes advantage of par fives, and there's only 2 of those here at YLI, Darnell. And you see, at least in 2025, he kind of struggled with par 4s, which is what YLI is all about. So, if I'm, again, much like Takumi Kanaya, if I'm late on Taylor Pendrith or if he plays well this week, I'll chalk it up to him being in better form than I thought he was. But this prior course performance kind of scares me away a little bit. Okay, let's start making some lineups real quick. Again, feel free to jump into chat with any questions you have. I can't promise I'll get to them all. I'll get to as many as I can. If we're going to make the most popular lineup that we think we're going to see, it's going to be Russell Henley, who's right now at least projected per Gabe at 30 to 31%. I wouldn't be surprised to see him at 35%. I'm not staying away from him. I'm not going to advocate that you do stay away from him. I'm all in on Russell Henley. I love Russell Henley this week. Just understand that you're setting yourself up for a very, very duplicated start, if you will, if you use Henley. But the most common lineup that I've seen, at least per projected ownerships, it's Russell Henley, it's JJ Spawn, Corey Connors, Nico Echeverria, and again, remember, I really like these players. I like Russell Henley. I like Connors. But you're not able to put all of these guys together in these lineups. Nico Echeverria actually probably not going to be able to be put into this. Then you come down, you've got Matt McCarty at 75. Sorry, there we go. Austin, I will go down into 6,900 Austin Eckroat because he is the most popular 6K play. Normally, I don't like going into the 6Ks for our fellow contestants, but seems appropriate here. And then 7,200 doesn't look like a whole lot down here. You got what's this? 5.5%, 5.5%. So maybe they come off of Connors to a Nico Echeverria. That leaves them 79, which is Denny McCarthy. Rico Hoey's getting some love. Aaron Rye's getting some love. Like, I don't want any part of Aaron Rye this week. Michael Kim at 73. 685. That's got her up. We can go up to, let's go maybe an Aaron Rye. So these are the kind of lineups that you're probably going to run into the most, seemingly, with these Henley and Spawns or Henley and Hideki's, maybe even Griffin and Spawn. Aaron Rye is very popular. This could also be Corey Connors. Nico Echeverria could be in this. Matthew McCarty. These are the kind of lineups that are getting built this week, seemingly. So how are we going to maneuver around that? I'll give you 2 ways to go about it. Pick 2 out of the low 7Ks. S.H. Kim. I really like this. I like S.H. Kim. The only issue is that he's got the bad half of the draw. But he's been pretty darn good in like two or three tries here at the Sony. S.H. Kim is another one of these players to look out for that a lot of people I don't think are aware of S.H. Kim. I would put an asterisk next to him. He's been a lot better than the metrics have been showing. He's been pretty darn good. I believe it's on the Asian tour. And I think he qualified via the Korn Ferry Tour, but he's been playing well worldwide. And I only collect stats for the PGA Tour. But SH Kim I really like. I don't know if that's this week, Ali. But I do like SH Kim. Christopher Raytan I talked about. I love Raytan. I don't want any part of Adam Schenk. And I like Nico Echeverria, but he's very popular. And that's why I've been all in on Denny McCarthy at the same price. So for your question there of pick two between those four, I would go SH Kim and Christopher Raytan. Because if you do that, you're going to be able to squeeze in a whole lot. Like, you can probably do a Russell Henley, maybe even do a Ben Griffin with him. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You got Russell Henley, Ben Griffin, and you still have 7,700 for 2 players left per player. So, you can go into the low 8s if there's somebody up here. Like, maybe you want to take a shot at Adam Scott. Maybe you want to take a shot at Brian Harmon because he's been so good here. I would go to Denny McCarthy. But 77s, like, maybe you're a big believer in Taylor Pendrith. That's fine. Maybe you're willing to take a shot on Johnny Kiefer, who I really like. I don't know if it's this week though because of the bad half of the draw. But I like what you're cooking there, Ali. Very much so. Those are the 2 I would go of those 4. How many of the golfers are lefties off the top of your head? Matt McCarty, Brian Harmon, Joe Highsmith. I'm going to say there's a handful. I know there's more. But those are the only ones that are coming to my head immediate. Bobby Mack, obviously, so there's 4. And admittedly, I don't know enough of some of the Korn Ferry Tour grads, like some of these guys down here, and the sponsor exemption players, like Tasai Nagasaki. I don't know anything about him. Corey Kazuma, AJ Ewert, like these guys who have been, who are or Korn Ferry Tour grads or sponsor exemptions. I don't know enough about them. Yella Moraju, I don't know anything about. Hank Libiota, I know is lefty. So there's a handful. I would say upwards of 10, John, I believe. But don't quote me on that. I tried to shout out ones that I knew for a fact. All right, 2 ways to counteract that horrendously popular lineup that we just saw. One way to go about it is to go balanced and hit, some of these players in the low 9s or the 8s that aren't getting a lot of attention. When I say balanced, I mean you're still going to be using somebody like a Colin Morikawa or a Bobby Mack or a JJ Spawn as your start. I wouldn't go JJ Spawn just because he's so popular. I've been going to Colin Morikawa. Maybe you take a shot at Hideki as one of the bad half of the draw players, and then you go something like Nick Taylor, who's been exceptional around here. Very, very, one of the best course histories here. Good half of the draw. By going Nick Taylor, you might be able to squeeze in a Corey Connors, but I'm still trying to be hesitant about that. Maybe you go Adam Scott. I don't mind an Adam Scott here this week. Come down to a guy that's been talked about quite a bit tonight, Christopher Raytan. Again, I would go Denny McCarthy in here. I'm all in on Denny McCarthy, but I'm also saving him for a couple of other lineups that I want to build. Again, I don't know how of risk averse you are to the good half / bad half of the draw. Like, I think Daniel Berger could be interesting. Billy Horschel, absolutely, is somebody to take a look at this week. I'm going to sprinkle some Billy Horschel. You might be scared away from the hip injury that he had last year, but he played in the fall, got some of that rust off. Could be very interesting this week. It's Bermuda Billy. You got pay attention to that for a reason. Then fill this out however you want. You got 7,900. Again, this for me, this would be Denny McCarthy. Yeah, take a shot on Taylor Pendrith maybe. Again, he hasn't played all that well here, but he's got enough things going for him. Like, he's pretty darn good in the wind, pretty darn good putter on Bermuda. Like, I can understand the logic behind going to a Taylor Pendrith. That's one way you can go about it. Like, this is the low end of the ownership. Like, I'm highlighting the unique options in each of these areas. With this low of ownership, you could easily, absolutely go Corey Connors if you wanted to. And it's not going to hurt you that bad in terms of total ownership. But the key is to be unique at certain spots. So if you go Corey Connors, you probably aren't going to be able to go JJ Spawn. So you're either going to have to go like Hideki or JJ. And then depending on that, it would be Corey Connors or Adam Scott. You know, you're going to go Christopher Raytan over Nico Echeverria and these guys in the 7,500 range. You know, take a shot on Pendrith, et cetera, et cetera. That's the balanced build. I don't particularly like that this week. I'll do it, but I'm not totally in love with it. Another way to go about it is to go the opposite end of the spectrum, and is just to get really, really greedy. And I showed you a little bit of it before, but go Russell Henley and Ben Griffin. Just jam both of them in there. Get them in there. Two of the, probably three tournament favorites. My number one player for the week. I know he's technically second, but good half of the draw and all that stuff. All things considered, I would put Russell Henley first. Russell Henley, Ben Griffin, hard to argue. Anyone who had more of a breakout in 2025, other than maybe JJ Spawn. Again, Denny McCarthy, you come down here, and this is all glued together by the fact of the mad scientist play of Tom Hoge. So you do Tom Hoge, you can, fill this out. Again, it's that magical 7,700 that we had for Ali a moment ago. You can fill this in with Christopher Raytan and Daniel Berger, or maybe you want to get maybe you really like Nico Echeverria, which is fine. You can come down to 7,500 and Daniel Berger, or Mac Meisner, who I didn't talk about. He's got the bad half of the draw, but Mac Meisner's been pretty good around YLI. He's worth a shot probably. Yeah, let's throw him into this. Like, this is another way you can go about building your lineups this week, is to get really, really greedy up top and find your low six, or find your six. Tom Hoge, S.H. Kim, Austin Eckroat is another option. A little bit more expensive. He's also pretty popular. You see the ownership here. I mean, this is pretty high, but understand you're probably not going to get duplicated much, if at all, because you're going to Hoge or whoever 6K play you choose. Mac Meisner is not the most common play in the mid sevens. If you wanted to get off of even more of this, you can save some money here and go like Haotong Li. Really start getting unique on a couple of areas. Nothing better than Hoge when his irons are dialed. I'm telling you, P. It's a sneaky suspicion for me. So this is another way you can go about it. I do like this build this week. I've been doing it, a fair amount, but you start getting squeezed a little bit, and you're starting to get a whole lot of Tom Hoge ownership, at least for me. So, I kind of wanted to hold off on that a little bit. The third way I've been going about it, I've just been trying to beat those lineups. Yes, I've been using Russell Henley. Sometimes I'll use Ben Griffin. But whereas they're going to JJ Spawn, I've been going to Colin. Yes, it's still quite a bit of ownership, but 18% versus 24.5%, there is a pivot there. I'm hoping that Colin beats JJ. Then I come down, maybe I hit a Nick Taylor. And if I do a Nick Taylor, then I'm, more in the low sevens. If I don't, I go to Denny, and then I do a little bit more of a balanced build at the end of it. Austin Eckroat finishes it up. Again, I've been doing quite a bit of Bud Cauley. This could be a shot where you could take Brian Harman. and, bank on his pretty darn good course history here. Again, take a shot on Johnny Kiefer, Taylor Pendrith, Christopher Raytan. A lot of these different options here. Raytan, 7,500. Let's find someone else here. I used Hao Tong Lee. Again, I would go to Bud Cauley. Maybe think about Webb. I don't know. Bad half of the draw. Older. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'd just do Bud Cauley, save some money. Or Nud Cauley, apparently, as he's called. So those are the kind of lineups that I've been building this week. Combination of 3. Very, very little balanced lineups, like maybe 2 or 3 balanced lineups. I've done a few of the really greedy where I've gone Henley Griffin, Henley Morikawa, Taylor, Henley Hideki, Keegan, and then bottom it out at Tom Hoagie. And then I've done a fair number of these style of lineups too, where I'm just trying to beat everybody. I'm trying to beat the most popular lineup. Yes, I'm still using Henley, but I'm going Morikawa over Spawn, going McCarthy over Echeverria, etc., etc. Can you put course values in order? Does the stat sheet incorporate the wind and wave advantage? So my rankings do not. My rankings are a true mathematical, numerical computation based on these 3 numbers. That's why I give you this information, so that way you can use it how you see fit. I would, and that's why I would say Russell Henley is my number 1 player, all things considered, because he has the good half of the draw, and Hideki has the bad half of the draw. But no, to answer your question, no, my rankings do not incorporate the half of the draw, or like wave advantage. You wanted to see very quickly course values in order. Again, remember, this is in the past 5 years. Past 5 years. I only go back 5 years because a lot of things change. Players change caddies. Players change clubs. Courses get renovated. I only go back 5 years. Whether you can agree or disagree, I'm just telling you as the viewer, I'm being transparent. I'm only going back 5 years. But just so you know, or for your information, that is the ordering if you wanted to sort this field by what I have deemed course value and how well they have played that course, or this course, the past 5 years. Nick Taylor, Russell Henley, Morikawa, Pavone. I will say Morikawa and Pavone, it's only 1 tournament, so be aware of that. Whereas somebody like Nick Taylor and Russell Henley have played it multiple years, so be aware of that. But Morikawa did finish 7th. Pavone did finish 7th. So you have to give them credit for, even though it's a smaller sample size, you have to give them credit for a very good finish, even though it's only 1 time. Hideki's played well here. Chris Kirk's played well here. Vincent, etc. And then at the bottom, John, these are the guys who have played the worst around YLI. I'm going to resort on. Let's just sort on my rankings. All right, to end the show this evening, we're going to go the 2026 Picks Challenge between Gabe and I. And again, our full write-ups are over on his social media page, and we encourage you to play along, whether that's in the comments of this show or this video, or go over to his social media page and play along. But I'm going to turn off the camera, so that way you can see our picks. The Sony selections for this week. My winner, I'm going to choose Russell Henley. Yawn, boring, I get it. I'm just very confident that Russell Henley's going to play well at the Sony. There are things that are just made for each other. Peanut butter and jelly. Scotty Scheffler and the Masters. Lamb and tuna fish. Like, things just go together. It's Russell Henley and YLI. So I'm going to take Russell Henley to be the winner. And I don't hate Gabe's pick at all. He's going to take Collin Morikawa. My favorite play, I talked about it all night. He's a pivot off of somebody that's very popular. He's got the good half of the draw. My favorite play is Denny McCarthy. And I love Gabe's favorite play as well. I love Nick Taylor this week. I just really like Denny McCarthy just that little bit much more because he's cheaper and all that. But I love everything about Nick Taylor as well. So I love Gabe's choice there. I'm going to fade Aaron Rye. Aaron Rye has the good half of the draw, but he's 16% owned, and he has been really bad at Waialae. He does not have a finish better than T57. So I don't want any part of Aaron Rye until he shows me that he is comfortable playing Waialae. A lot of that is he has never gained strokes putting here. He's lost 1.1, 2.3, and 2.5 in his 3 tournaments here at Waialae. There's something about these greens he doesn't like, at least so far, or he hasn't figured them out. So I don't want any part of Aaron Rye. Gabe agrees with me. He's gonna fade Siwoo, much like I am. Mad Scientist play. This is generally speaking, a 6K play or cheap 7K play who is either enabling a very unique style lineup or who is just a complete oddball, 3% owned or less. I'm going to go with Tom Hoagie, and Gabe's going to go with Bryce Garnett. Our fear of missing out, our FOMO, the guys we're going to play in some lineups, even though our conscience tells us we probably shouldn't. I'm going to play Keegan. He's on the bad half of the draw. Things can go sideways for Keegan pretty quickly, but he's been so very good here. There's just something about Waialae that he likes. So he's my FOMO, and Gabe's going to go with Bobby Mack as his FOMO. And then the bottom category there, that'll change every week. That's our quote-unquote wild card category. This week we're going to go with top rookie. It's just something that came to us tonight, or today rather, with the influx of new talent on the PGA Tour. I'm going to go with Johnny Kiefer with a very, very, very close honorable mention to Christopher Raytan. And Gabe is going to go with his top rookie, Keita Nakajima. Last question. Would I be wasting Nick Taylor as my one and done pick? No. I like that a lot. Because there's not a lot of courses that scream Nick Taylor. Other than maybe the RBC Canadian Open, because it's his national, open. But I really, really like the idea of using Nick Taylor here. The only problem I have with that, Ali, is that I think a lot of people are going to use Nick Taylor this week. Maybe not. But I would think he'd be one of the more popular one-and-done selections. But as far as to answer your question in a vacuum, no, I do not think that is a waste. I think this is a good opportunity to use Nick Taylor because there's not another course that is obvious that you would target Nick Taylor later in the season. So that's what I have for you all in terms of a DFS Tactics show. I'll bring us back to the rankings here and my beautiful face. Sarcasm intended. I have a lot of people to thank. Darnell, John, P, Sam, Kyle, Ali. I think I hit everybody. I want to thank all of you all for jumping into chat this evening. Very, very much appreciated. And thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. We're going to try and start 2026 off on the right foot over in Hawaii with the Sony Open. So thanks again for all the support. It is so very, very much appreciated. For all of the wagers you've made this week for the Sony Open, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the Sony Open, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.